Hey, Wide Awake family. If you see this, it's your sign to smash that like button. Yes, you listening right now. That way YouTube shows you more amazing stories like this one. We love you all. Now enjoy the stories. The scariest part did happen during the date. It happened after I thought it was over, after I had already decided to forget him, after I had already unmatched and tossed the night into the mental pile labeled whatever. That's the part that still messes with my head. How fast a normal ending turned into something official and heavy and out of my control. The date itself was fine in the blandest way possible. Not bad enough to leave early, not good enough to care about later. We met at a mid-range grow place near a shopping center, the kind of spot that smells like oil no matter what you order. Tables on the walls, booths packed too close together, families on one side, awkward dates on the other. I picked it because it felt safe and forgettable. He showed up on time, which already put him above average. Clean clothes, polite smile, decent posture. Nothing flashy, nothing alarming. We sat down and ordered drinks. Mine cost $5 and tasted watered down. The conversation stayed surface level the entire time. Jobs, traffic, how annoying apps were. He laughed at the right moments, but it never felt like he was really there. More like he was performing a version of himself he had practiced. I noticed little things that didn't add up, but didn't feel important enough to question. He never talked about his live situation clearly. He avoided questions about weekends. He checked his phone but always angled it away, like he was hiding notifications rather than content. None of it screamed danger. It just felt off. About halfway through, he told a story that contradicted something he said earlier. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. I didn't call it out. I didn't care enough to. By the time the food came, I already knew there would be a second date. We finished eating. He paid. He walked me to my car. There was an awkward pause that felt like he wanted more than a goodbye hug. I didn't offer it. I got in my car and drove home feeling relieved it was over. By the time I got home, I had already unmatched him. No dramatic reason. Just the usual swipe away to keep the act clean. I put my phone down, changed clothes, and started a show. The night was done. Or so I thought. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it at first. Then it rang again. Same number. Something in my chest tightened. I answered, expecting spam or some weird follow-up from him using a different number. It was. It was police. The word alone made my stomach drop. My body went cold in that instant way it does when something suddenly feels real. They asked for my full name. I confirmed it, my voice shaking more than I expected. They told me my Tinder messages were part of an active situation. They asked if I had recently been on a date with a man matching his description. They asked if I had communicated with him through the app. My mind raced. I thought about scams. Misunderstandings. Some elaborate prank. None of it made sense. They explained slowly, carefully. He had been using our chat to cheat on his wife. Not just me. Multiple women. Overlapping timelines. He had gotten caught earlier that night. His wife had gone through his phone. Screenshots everywhere. Messages timestamped. Names listed. Mine included. Apparently things escalated fast. There had been yelling, accusations, threats of legal action. He had tried to claim the chats were fake, that someone else was using his phone, that he was actually meeting anyone. The police needed to verify identities. My hands shook as I sat down on the edge of my bed. I felt exposed in a way I couldn't fully explain, like something private had been ripped open and placed under a bright light without warning. They asked if I still had access to the messages. I told them I unmatched him, that the chat was gone. They said that was okay. They already had copies from his phone. They just needed confirmation that I was a real person and that the date happened. I confirmed it. I told them when and where we met, what we talked about, how long it lasted, how nothing physical happened. Every detail felt heavier than it should have been. They thanked me for cooperating, told me I was in trouble, told me they might need to follow up later, then they hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my show still playing quietly in the background like nothing had happened. The normalcy of it felt wrong, like the room didn't match what was going on in my head. My first instinct was guilt. Not because I did anything wrong, but because someone else had been hurt using my face, my words, my presence. I thought about his wife, sitting somewhere with proof spread out in front of her. Messages I had sent without thinking now frozen as evidence of betrayal. I thought about how casual I had been, how easy it was for him to lie, how I had walked into that restaurant believing his single status without question. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined my messages being read again and again by strangers, taken out of context, interpreted, judged, not as flirting or small talk, but as proof. The next morning, I got another call. More questions, confirmation of screenshots, clarification of times. The officer was calm, professional, almost apologetic for involving me. That somehow made it worse, like this was routine for them. They told me he had done this before, that my messages helped establish a pattern, that his wife was pushing for consequences. Not criminal, but serious enough to require documentation. When the call ended, I deleted Tinder entirely. Not just the app, the account, photos gone, bio gone, like I could scrub myself out of the situation if I erased the entry point. For days after, I jumped whenever my phone rang. Every unknown number felt loaded. I avoided that restaurant when I drove past it, like the building itself had become part of the story. A week later, I got a final update. They didn't need anything else from me. The situation had been handled. They thanked me again and wished me well. That was it. No apology from him. No explanation. No closure. Just the knowledge that my attempt at a normal date had briefly become part of someone else's collapse. What disturbed me was being contacted by police. It was realizing how easily my words could be used without my consent. How something meant to be private could become evidence. How a swipe could tie you to someone else's life in ways you never see coming. I still think about the timing sometimes. How fast it all happened. Date over. Unmatch. Phone call. Like cause and effect collapsing into the same hour. Now when I unmatch someone, I pause for a second longer than I used to. Not because I think it will change anything, but because I know endings don't always end when you think they do. The moment she asked if I trusted her, I felt that small hitch in my chest that I usually ignore. It was fear exactly. More like when your body pauses for a second before stepping off a curb because it ensures a car is incoming. I ignored it anyway, because that's what I had been doing a lot back then. Ignoring small warnings and calling it being chill. We met at a casual ramen place that stayed open late and catered to people who didn't want to go home yet. Narrow tables, foggy windows, the constant hiss of broth boiling somewhere in the back. It was loud enough that you could talk without feeling overheard, but quiet enough that you noticed when something changed. I got there early and sat with my back to the wall, watching steam rise from other people's bowls. My food cost $13 and I didn't even remember ordering it. She showed up 10 minutes late and acted like it was part of the plan. No apology, just a smile and a quick hug like we were already familiar. She slid into the seat across from me and immediately pulled her phone out, setting it upright against a glass of water like it belonged there. I didn't think much of it at first. People check their phones. People take pictures of food. People document everything now. I had already learned not to comment unless something felt obviously wrong. The conversation started easy. Too easy. She asked questions quickly and jumped topics just as fast. She laughed at things that weren't jokes and leaned in close when I talked, nodding like she was really listening. Every few minutes, she glanced at her phone screen, not down at it, but straight at it, like she was checking eye contact with someone else. About 15 minutes in, she asked me again if I trusted her. The question came out of nowhere, wedged between talk about work and how spicy the broth was. I laughed a little and said sure, because what else do you say to that without sounding dramatic? That's when she tapped her screen. The phone made a small chime sound, different from a text, more deliberate. The screen lit brighter, and I caught a reflection in it, distorted by the angle. She told me she was live. My brain took a second to process what that meant. Live could mean a lot of things. Video call, story, something temporary. Then I noticed the tiny scrolling text at the side of her screen. Usernames? Emojis. Numbers popping up and disappearing. My stomach dropped. She was live streaming our date. Not filming quietly. Not asking permission. Fully broadcasting. Her face angled just right, me clearly visible in the background. The phone was hidden or subtle. It was planted between us like a third presence at the table. I asked her to turn it off. My voice sounded calm, but my hands were already sweating. She smiled and said it was no big deal. Said her viewers loved first dates. Said it made things more real. The word viewers echoed in my head. I looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware of how public everything was. How exposed. How I had unknowingly walked into a stage. People around us laughed and ate and talked, completely unaware that somewhere else, dozens or hundreds of strangers were watching me slurp noodles and try to be polite. She told me not to worry, said she wouldn't show anything personal. Said it was just vibes. She angled the phone slightly, but did turn it off. Messages started popping faster now. I couldn't read them all, but I saw enough. Comments about me. About how I looked. About how awkward or cute or boring I seemed. My chest tightened. I pushed my bowl away. The food tasted wrong now, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I told her I wasn't comfortable with this. I told her I wanted to leave. That's when the donations started. A sound chimed from her phone. A cheerful little noise. Then another. And another. Numbers flashed briefly on the screen. $5. $10. More names. More comments. She laughed and told me her viewers wanted me to stay. She said they were tipping for more content. She said it would be rude to leave now that people were paying. I felt sick. I stood up, heart racing, my legs shaky but steady enough to move. I reached for my jacket. She did stand. She didn't grab me. She just turned the phone slightly so it caught me rising from my seat. The comments exploded. More donations. Bigger numbers. $20. $50. The chime kept going, each one making my stomach twist tighter. She told me people really liked the tension. Said they were voting with money. I realized then that I wasn't a date. I was a prop. A character in something I didn't consent to. The kindness she had shown earlier clicked into place at performance. The questions. The laughter. All for an audience. I tried to walk away, but she raised her voice slightly, not shouting, just enough to draw attention. She said I was being dramatic. Said I agreed to trust her. Said everyone watching thought I was overreacting. I froze. Not because she was right, because suddenly I felt dozens of unseen eyes on me. Strangers judging my reaction in real time, turning my discomfort into entertainment. A couple at the next table glanced over. The server slowed as she passed, sensing something off but not sure what. I felt trapped in a way I had never felt before. Not physically, but socially. Like leaving would turn me into the villain of a story already being told without me. Another donation came through, a bigger one. She grinned and thanked the username out loud, calling them generous. She said, "Looks like you're staying." That was the moment I snapped out of it. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't look at the phone again. I grabbed my jacket and walked, fast, straight toward the door. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I expected her to follow. She didn't. Behind me, I heard the donations continue for a few seconds, then slow, then stop. Outside, the night air hit me like a wall. I leaned against the building, breathing hard, trying to calm the shaking in my hands. My phone buzzed immediately. Messages from her. Apologies mixed with irritation. Explanations about content and money and how I embarrassed her in front of her viewers. I blocked her without replying. As I walked home, my thoughts spiraled, not just about what happened, but about how easy it was. How quickly someone could turn a normal moment into something exploitative with one tap of a screen. How consent could be blurred and ignored when an audience got involved. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched her username, found clips, highlights, edited moments from other dates, different faces, different reactions, all framed as entertainment. None of the people looked fully aware of how they were being presented. I found a clip from our date too, just a short one. The moment I stood up, comments laughing, debating whether I was rude or shy or fake, donations frozen on the screen like proof that my discomfort had value. I reported it. I don't know if it got taken down. I did check again. What messed with me the most wasn't being filmed. It was realizing how powerless I felt once money entered the situation. How strangers could vote on my presence with their wallets. How easily someone could turn pressure into a joke and call it content. I still go out. I still meet people. But the second someone sets their phone upright on a table, my chest tightens. I don't wait to ask questions anymore. I leave. Because the most disturbing part of that night was the streaming. It was understanding how many people were willing to pay to watch someone else feel trapped. I noticed the backpack before I noticed him. It was big and overstuffed, slouched against a chair like it was tired from being carried around all day. It didn't match the place, or the vibe, or even his outfit. It felt out of place in a way I couldn't explain yet. I remember thinking it looked like something you'd bring on a bus ride, not a dinner date. I should have listened to that thought instead of brushing it off. We met at a small family-style Italian place that tried to feel cozy, but was really just cramped. Red booths, low lighting, pictures of old city streets on the walls. The kind of place where servers call everyone hun, and the menus are sticky no matter how often they clean them. It felt safe. Public. Predictable. That's why I picked it. I got there first and slid into a booth near the middle. Ordered water and stared at the door while I waited. When he walked in, the backpack was the first thing through the door, swinging a little too wide as he turned sideways to fit. Then he followed it, smiling nervously, scanning the room like he was checking for exits. He apologized for being a minute late even though he wasn't. Slid into the booth across from me and carefully placed the backpack on the seat beside him instead of the floor. That alone felt strange. Most people kick bags under the table. He kept it upright, zipped close. I asked if he was coming from somewhere else. He said no, just like to be prepared. Then he added just in case. Just in case of what didn't come up right away, and I did ask. I nodded and smiled like it was normal. Dating apps train you to accept quirks fast or risk looking judgmental. I didn't want to start the night by being that person. We ordered food. Mine came out to $14. He barely looked at the menu, like he already knew what he wanted or didn't really care. He kept adjusting the straps in the backpack even after setting it down, tugging at them like they were too tight even though it wasn't on his shoulders anymore. The conversation started awkward but manageable. Work talk. Commute complaints. How exhausting dating felt. He laughed at his own jokes before I could react, then apologized for laughing. His hands shook slightly when he lifted his glass. I noticed he was sweating even though the place wasn't hot. Beads forming at his hairline, his shirt darkening a bit at the collar. He kept wiping his palms on his pants under the table. Every few minutes, his eyes flicked down toward the backpack. I asked if he was okay. He said he got nervous on first dates. Said it always hit him harder than he expected. That felt honest. Relatable. I told him everyone gets nervous. That seemed to calm him for about 30 seconds. Then his knee started bouncing hard enough that the table rattled. Silverware clinked. The server glanced over once, then looked away. Halfway through the meal, he reached down and pulled the backpack onto his lap. My stomach tightened. He unzipped it carefully, like he didn't want to draw attention, but the sound was loud in the quiet between us. He glanced around, then looked back at me, cheeks flushed. He said he needed to show me something so it wouldn't be weird later. Before I could respond, he reached inside and pulled out folded clothes. Clean clothes. A shirt, underwear, socks, neatly packed in a plastic bag. My brain stalled out. I stared at them, then at him, then back at the table like maybe I was misreading the situation. He explained quickly, words tumbling over each other. Said he usually had accidents when he got nervous. Said it was a medical thing. Said it didn't always happen, but often enough that he came prepared. Said he didn't want to disappear suddenly if it happened. Said he wanted to be upfront. I felt frozen. Not scared in a running kind of way, just locked in place. My face burned. I could feel other tables nearby, could feel how public the moment was even though no one seemed to be looking directly at us yet. The smell hit a second later. Faint at first, easy to miss if you weren't expecting it, then unmistakable. My stomach dropped. His face crumpled. He froze mid-sentence, eyes wide, like his body had betrayed him exactly the way he feared. His hands shook as he shoved the clothes back into the backpack, zipper catching for a second before sliding shut. He stood up abruptly, knocking his knee into the table, water sloshed. The server looked over again, this time concerned. He muttered something about needing the bathroom and grabbed the backpack, clutching it tight against his chest. He walked fast toward the hallway, head down, shoulders hunched. The smell lingered in the booth, heavier now. A couple at the next table wrinkled their noses. Someone whispered something I couldn't hear. I sat there alone, heart pounding, trying to decide what to do. Part of me felt awful for him. Humiliation like that cuts deep. Another part of me wanted to disappear before he came back. Both feelings existed at the same time, tangled together. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The server came over and asked if everything was okay. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. She glanced toward the bathroom hallway and back at me, clearly piecing things together. After about 10 minutes, a manager walked past, eyes narrowing slightly as he caught the smell. I felt exposed, like I was being silently associated with what had just happened. He never came back. I waited longer than I should have, staring at the door, replaying the moment he pulled the clothes out. The honesty, the panic, the way he said just in case like he was used to life going wrong. Eventually, the server brought the check and set it down gently. I paid without looking at the total. I just wanted to leave. Outside, the air felt cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, breathing deeply, trying to reset my senses. My phone buzzed. A message from him. Apologies stacked on top of each other. Explanations. Embarrassment pouring through the screen. He said he understood if I didn't want to see him again. Said this was why dating was hard for him. Said he usually didn't make it past first dates. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to respond without being cruel or dishonest. Eventually, I sent a short message saying I hoped he was okay. Nothing more. Then I unmatched. On the walk home, my thoughts spiraled. Not about the accident itself, but about how prepared he was for it. How often it must have happened for him to carry a full change of clothes everywhere. How much of his life must revolve around managing that fear. What disturbed me wasn't just the moment. It was realizing how many quiet battles people carry into public spaces. How some nights are doomed before they even start, no matter how good the intentions are. Weeks later, I still think about that backpack sometimes. Sitting there beside him like a warning he couldn't ignore. The way he tried to control something uncontrollable. The way he wanted honesty to make it less awful and ended up making it heavier for both of us. I don't tell this story to laugh. It's not funny. It's uncomfortable and sad and human in a way that sticks to you. A reminder that dating apps don't just bring together profiles. They bring together vulnerabilities that don't always fit neatly across a table. The worst part was how normal the first 20 minutes felt. Not exciting, not awkward, just average enough that my brain relaxed. That's usually when things go wrong, I've noticed. When nothing is screaming at you to leave, when you finally unclench your shoulders and stop scanning the room for exits. That night taught me that calm can be a setup too. We met at a small late-night bakery cafe that stayed open way past when it should. Glass cases full of half-empty trays, the smell of sugar and burnt coffee hanging in the air. It wasn't romantic, but it felt safe. Families didn't come there, just tired people and couples killing time. She picked it because she said bars were too loud and she didn't drink much. That sounded reasonable. I got there first and took a small table near the window, ordered a drink that cost $4 and a pastry I didn't really want. I was already thinking this would be quick. Maybe an hour, polite conversation, then home. She walked in looking distracted. Not nervous exactly, just somewhere else. Her smile showed up late, like it had to catch up to her face. She apologized for being a few minutes late even though she wasn't really. Sat down, took off her jacket, and exhaled hard like she'd been holding her breath all day. We started talking, work stuff, how exhausting dating apps felt. How everyone seemed burned out but still trying. She laughed at my jokes, but the laughs didn't stick. They faded fast, like echoes in a big room. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted to her phone on the table. I asked if she was expecting something important. She said no, just habit, said she was trying to be better about it. She flipped the phone face down, then flipped it back up a minute later. I pretended not to notice. About 15 minutes in, she stopped mid-sentence, just froze. Stared at the table like she had lost something on it. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes filled instantly, like someone turned on a switch. Then she started crying. Not quiet tears. Not a single tear sliding down dramatically. Real crying, shoulders shaking, breath hitching, hands covering her face like she was embarrassed it was happening at all. Everyone around us noticed. A couple at the counter glanced over. The barista slowed down, watching from behind the register. I sat there, completely unprepared, my brain scrambling to figure out what to do. I asked if she was okay. Stupid question, but it's the only one that comes out in moments like that. She nodded and shook her head at the same time, wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, tried to breathe normally and failed. After a minute, she looked up at me with this raw, exhausted expression, like she had nothing left to hide behind. She apologized again and again, said she didn't mean for this to happen, said she thought she could handle it. Handle what turned out to be the rest of the story. She told me she had just been dumped. Not recently. Not earlier that day. Earlier that night. By another Tinder date. She said it so plainly that it took my brain a second to catch up. My chest tightened. I glanced at the clock on the wall without meaning to. The timeline snapped into place in my head in a way that made everything feel off balance. She explained that she had met someone before me. Drinks across town. Same app. Same kind of first date talk. She said she thought it was going well. Said she felt hopeful for the first time in a while. Then, apparently, he ended it right there. Told her he wasn't feeling it. Paid and left. She sat in her car and cried for a bit, then wiped her face, fixed her makeup, and drove to meet me. I didn't know how to react. My mind bounced between sympathy and shock and something darker I couldn't quite name. I felt bad for her, genuinely. Being rejected hurts, especially face to face. But I also felt like I had been walked into something unfinished, like I was a rebound that started 30 minutes too early. She kept talking, words spilling out now that the dam had broken. She said she hated being alone. Said the silence after dates was worse than the dates themselves. Said she didn't want to go home and sit with the feeling. Said she thought another date might distract her enough to get through the night. I sat there listening, nodding, trying to stay present even though my stomach felt heavy. Around us, the cafe kept moving. People ordered. Cups clinked. Someone laughed too loudly near the door. Life didn't pause just because our table had turned into an emotional spill. She asked me if I thought she was pathetic. The question hit harder than I expected. I told her no because I didn't. I told her I understood wanting distraction. That part was true. I've been there. But something about the way she talked about the other date lingered. The details, the comparisons, the way she kept checking her phone like she was hoping he'd change his mind. It felt I was sitting in the shadow of someone else, competing with a ghost who wasn't even there. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and her face fell further. No message. Just a notification from the app. A reminder that there were more people out there, waiting to be slotted into the next hour. She laughed weakly and said dating felt like a conveyor belt. Said she was tired of being an option. The irony of that sentence didn't seem to register with her. I realized then that I wasn't really on a date. I was part of her recovery process, a buffer between pain and loneliness. I was chosen. I was scheduled. That thought made my chest ache in a way that surprised me. Not because I wanted more from her, but because I suddenly felt very small, very replaceable, like I could leave and someone else would slide into this chair within the hour. She started apologizing again, saying she ruined the night, saying she understood if I wanted to leave. Her tears had slowed, but her eyes were red and swollen. Mascara smudged faintly under them. I didn't know what to do. Leaving felt cruel. Staying felt dishonest. I chose the middle ground that didn't really exist. I stayed a little longer, listened, nodded, offered napkins, said things people say when they want help but don't know how. Eventually, she calmed down enough to breathe normally. The crying stopped, replaced by this hollow tiredness. She looked at me and said she probably shouldn't have come out tonight at all. She was right. We sat in silence for a bit, the kind that feels heavier after something emotional. The pastry on my plate had gone untouched. Her drink sat melting. Finally, she said she wanted to go home. Said she didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. I agreed. We stood up awkwardly. There was no hug, no promise to text. Just a quiet understanding that this wasn't going anywhere. Outside, the night air felt cool and unreal. She apologized one last time, then walked to her car without looking back. I stood there watching her taillights disappear down the street. On the walk home, my thoughts spiraled. Not about her crying, but about how dating had turned into this rapid-fire sequence of emotional collisions. How people bounce from table to table carrying unresolved feelings like open containers, spilling them wherever they land. Later that night, I checked the app out of habit. She had unmatched me already. Clean cut. Efficient. Maybe she was meeting someone else. Maybe she was finally home alone. They'll never know. What stuck with me wasn't just that she had another date before me. It was realizing how close together all of it was. How little time there was between hurt and hope. How quickly people try to overwrite pain with new faces. Sometimes I think about that bakery cafe when I pass it. The warm lights. The quiet tables. How easy it is to walk in carrying something heavy and set it down in front of a stranger. That night did scare me in the usual way. No lies, no yelling, no public blow-up. Just a reminder that sometimes you're not a date at all. You're a pause button, a temporary place to sit with someone else's heartbreak. The thing I remember most is the call itself. It's the way the room went quiet inside my head while everything else kept going. Forks still clinked. Music still played. People still laughed at nearby tables. But for me, it was like someone had closed a door and locked it from the outside. I was stuck watching something I didn't agree to be part of. We met at a casual diner that stayed open too late and smelled like coffee no matter what time it was. Booths lined the walls, cracked vinyl and sticky tables that had seen better years. I picked it because it felt harmless. Neutral ground. Nothing fancy, nothing romantic. Just food and conversation, and an easy exit if it went nowhere. He had said he was single. Not complicated. Not in between things. Single. He said it early like he wanted to clear the air. I didn't even ask. He volunteered it. I remember thinking that was a good sign. Honesty right out of the gate. I got there first and slid into a booth near the back. Ordered a drink that cost $3 and waited, scrolling on my phone, not expecting much. When he walked in, he looked normal. Average. Clean jacket. Tired eyes. Nothing about him set off alarms. He smiled when he saw me and waved like we already knew each other a little. We sat down and started talking. The conversation was amazing, but it wasn't painful either. Work stories, annoying coworkers. How weird dating apps felt lately. He laughed easily and asked questions at the right moments. It felt safe. Boring, maybe, but safe. I noticed his phone right away because it was face up on the table. Screen lighting up every few minutes. He didn't hide it. Didn't apologize for it. Just glanced and kept talking. I figured it was work stuff. Some people can't unplug. I didn't love it, but I didn't call it out. Our food came. Mine was $11 and looked better than it tasted. We ate and talked around bites, the way people do when they're still figuring out each other. He mentioned his job a lot. Long hours. Meetings. Pressure. He seemed proud of how busy he was. About halfway through the meal, his phone rang. Loud. He glanced at the screen and froze for half a second too long. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. His jaw tightened. His fingers hovered over the phone like he was deciding something quickly. Then he answered it. On speaker. I don't know if it was an accident or if he thought it would look less suspicious. Maybe he was panicking. Either way, the voice filled the space between us immediately. Clear, close, unmistakably familiar to him. It was a woman. Her voice was tired but soft. She asked where he was. There was concern in it, not anger. The kind of tone that comes from checking in, not catching someone. Then she mentioned she was pregnant. That word hit me like a punch. My chest tightened instantly. I felt my face go hot. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. He didn't look away from me. He stared directly at me while he spoke into the phone. His eyes did blink. His expression didn't change. He told her he was at a work meeting, said it smoothly, easily, like he had said it before. My stomach turned. The woman on the phone said something else. I couldn't hear all of it over the noise of the diner, but I caught enough. She sounded relieved. Trusting. She said she missed him. Asked when he'd be home. He kept staring at me while he responded. Nodded slightly, like he was acknowledging my presence without actually acknowledging it. He said he'd call her later, said he loved her. Then he ended the call. The silence between us was thick and heavy. My ears rang. I could hear my own breathing louder than anything else. I looked around, half expecting other people to be staring, but no one seemed to have noticed, or maybe they did and just didn't care. He finally looked away, setting his phone down like nothing had happened, like that was the most disturbing thing he'd ever witnessed across a diner table. I didn't know what to say. My brain felt stuck, replaying the call on a loop. Pregnant. Work meeting. Eye contact. The ease of the lie. The comfort in it. I asked him what that was about. My voice sounded far away, like it wasn't mine. He sighed and rubbed his face. Said it was complicated. Said he didn't want to get into it. Said he technically was single because things were basically over. Said she was emotional because of the pregnancy. Said it wasn't as bad as it sounded. None of that mattered. What mattered was that he had just lied to someone carrying his child while looking me in the eyes. Not hiding. Not ashamed. Just doing it. I felt sick. I'd pushed my plate away. My appetite was gone. The food looked wrong now, like it did belong in my body. I asked him why he was on Tinder if that was his situation. He shrugged, said he needed a distraction, said he didn't want to be alone right now, said dating helped him feel normal. Normal. That word felt insulting. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky but steady enough to hold me. He looked surprised, like he had considered that this might end the night, like he thought I'd sit there and accept whatever explanation he'd offered. I grabbed my bag and told him I was leaving. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I just said it plainly. He frowned, annoyed now, said I was overreacting, said this was just how things were sometimes, said I didn't understand adult relationships. I didn't respond. I turned and walked toward the door, my heart pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. The air outside felt colder than it should have. I stood there for a second, breathing, trying to calm the shaking in my hands. My phone buzzed almost immediately, a message from him. Apology mixed with defensiveness. Explanations stacked on top of excuses. I didn't open it. I unmatched and blocked him without reading further. On the walk home, my thoughts spiraled. Not because I felt rejected or embarrassed, but because I couldn't stop thinking about her. Sitting somewhere else, trusting him, carrying a child while he sat in a diner lying without hesitation. I wondered how many times he'd done that, how many meetings were really dinners, how many women had sat across from him while he balanced lives like tabs on a browser. When I got home, I locked my door and sat on my bed in the dark. My live felt quieter than usual, heavier. I replayed the moment he answered the phone over and over. The confidence, the eye contact, the lack of hesitation. That part is what still messes with me. Not that he lied. People lie all the time. It's how comfortable he was doing it. How easily he split his attention between two realities without letting either one crack. A few days later, Tinder sent me a notification saying his account was no longer active. I don't know if he deleted it or got reported or just moved on to something else. I don't really care. Sometimes when my phone rings unexpectedly, my stomach tightens. Sometimes when someone puts their phone on speaker in public, my chest feels heavy. Not because of the sound, but because of what it can carry into a space without warning. That night ended quietly. No yelling, no drama. Just a realization that some people can look you straight in the face and lie to someone they love without blinking. And being close enough to witness that feels worse than being lied to yourself. I didn't expect the lie to be that big. Usually when people lie on Tinder, it's about height or jobs or how busy they are. Small stuff that doesn't really matter once you're already sitting across from each other. This one felt different, but only in hindsight. At the time, it just felt like another detail I filed away without checking too closely. She told me she lived alone. It came up early casually like a fun fact. She said it when we were still messaging, joking about how quiet her place was and how she could finally watch whatever she wanted. I remember thinking that sounded nice. Independent, stable, someone who had their own space and their own life figured out at least a little. We agreed to meet at a sit-down restaurant not far from where she said she lived. Nothing fancy. The kind of place families go on weeknights and couples go when they don't want to dress up. Booths with vinyl seats. Menus with way too many options. Soft lighting that tries to hide how worn everything is. I got there first and asked for a booth near the wall. I always do that without thinking. It makes me feel less exposed. I slid into the seat facing the room and set my phone down, watching people come and go while I waited. She showed up right on time, smiled big, hugged me like she was already comfortable. She smelled like clean laundry and something sweet. She slid into the booth across from me and immediately started talking like she was excited to be there. It felt easy. Natural. The kind of date that makes you relax your shoulders without realizing it. We ordered food. Mine came out to $12. We talked about work and random stuff and the neighborhood. She mentioned again how close she lived. How she liked being on her own. How she didn't have to answer to anyone. I remember nodding along, not questioning it, because why would I? About 20 minutes in, I noticed she kept glancing toward the entrance. Not nervously, more like checking the time. I figured she was just people watching. The place was busy. Families coming in. Kids laughing too loud. Parents trying to keep them in check. Then her parents walked in. I didn't know they were her parents at first. They were just another older couple entering the restaurant. They paused at the host stand, looking around. The woman pointed toward our booth. My stomach tightened before my brain caught up. The man smiled wide when he saw her. Waved. The woman followed his gaze and lit up. They walked over together, stopping right at the end of our booth. She froze. The shift was instant. Her smile dropped. Her shoulders went stiff. She stood up halfway like she could decide whether to sit or greet them. Her parents didn't wait for an invitation. They leaned in, beaming, clearly happy to see her. I sat there, confused, heart starting to pound. This wasn't a random coincidence. The way they looked at her was familiar, comfortable, practiced. She introduced me quickly, too quickly. Stumbled through it like she was tripping over words. Her parents smiled politely at me, asked how long we'd been together. Together. That word echoed in my head. I didn't answer fast enough. She cut in and said something vague. The parents nodded like it made sense. Then the boyfriend walked in. I knew instantly. The energy changed again, heavier this time. He was young, mid our age, wearing a jacket he clearly owned the room in. He scanned the restaurant the way people do when they're looking for someone specific. When his eyes landed on our booth, he stopped. He walked over slowly, confusion written all over his face. He looked at her first, then at her parents, then at me. He asked why I was sitting in his seat. Not loudly, not angry, just genuinely confused, like he was trying to understand how reality had shifted while he wasn't looking. I felt like all the air got sucked out of the booth. Her parents turned to look at him, surprise flashing across their faces, then confusion, then something darker. Questions started flying, overlapping, none of them aimed at me, but all of them trapping me in place. She tried to explain, tried to talk fast enough to outrun the truth. Nothing landed. Every sentence contradicted the last. Her parents looked between us, trying to piece it together. The boyfriend stared at me like I had broken into his lid by mistake. I finally stood up because sitting felt impossible. My legs shook as I slid out of the booth. I apologized, even though I had no idea what I was apologizing for. It felt automatic, like a reflex to diffuse tension. The boyfriend laughed once, sharp and humorless. Her parents didn't smile anymore. The restaurant noise faded into the background like it always does when something private becomes public. People stared openly now. Forks paused midair. A server hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing was happening. She looked at me then, eyes wide, pleading, not to stay, not to help, just not to make it worse. That look stuck with me more than anything else. I grabbed my jacket and stepped away from the table. The boyfriend moved to slide into the booth automatically, reclaiming his spot without thinking. The seat I had been warming minutes earlier. As I walked toward the exit, I heard her parents asking questions, heard her voice cracking, heard the boyfriend saying something I couldn't make out. It all blurred together. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. My hands shook as I pulled my phone out, half expecting messages to already be there. There were none. I walked home without calling a ride, needing the time to let my head catch up. Every step replayed the moment he said seat. Not table. Not place. Seat. Like I had wandered into someone else's routine and sat where I did belong. Later that night, she messaged me. Long apology. Explanations. Excuses layered on top of each other. She said she didn't live alone yet. Said she was planning to. Said things were complicated. Said she didn't mean for it to happen like that. I didn't respond. I unmatched and blocked, not out of anger, but because I didn't want any more pieces of that night carried forward. A week later, I passed that restaurant again. Same booths, same families, same quiet chaos. I wondered if they ever went back there together, if the seat felt different after. What messed with me wasn't just the lie. It was how many people were folded into it without knowing. Parents, boyfriend, me, all placed her on the same table like props in a scene she couldn't control anymore. I still think about how confidently she said she lived alone, how easy it was to believe, how fast that story collapsed under fluorescent lights and vinyl seats. The night felt disposable before I even realized why. Not bad, not scary, just thin, like it could tear if you pulled on it too hard. I remember standing in my living room tying my shoes and feeling like I was getting ready for something that didn't really want me there. I ignored that thought because I always do. I told myself I was being dramatic and headed out anyway. We had picked a casual spot, one of those late night food places that pretends to be relaxed, but is really just loud and bright enough to keep people from staying too long. Plastic menus, sticky tables, tabs on every wall playing different things. It felt neutral, which was probably the point. I got there first and grabbed a booth near the back, ordered a drink that cost $4, and tried not to scroll too much while I waited. He showed up a few minutes late, sliding into the booth like he was rushing between things. He smiled quickly, apologized without really meaning it, and pulled his phone out immediately. I noticed it right away. Not because people can't check their phones, but because he didn't stop. Even while sitting down, even while talking, the screen stayed in his hand. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe work stuff. Maybe something urgent. I started the conversation anyway, talking about traffic, the place, how busy it was. He nodded along, half listening, eyes flicking down to his phone every few seconds. His screen lit up constantly. Tinder colors, swipe motions, message previews. He didn't hide it, didn't angle it away, just kept going like this was normal behavior. I tried to ignore it, focused on my food when it came, focused on the noise around us, but every time he paused mid-sentence to check his phone, the air between us thinned more. It felt like I was talking to someone standing halfway out the door. About 10 minutes in, I asked if everything was okay. He said, yeah, just busy tonight. He laughed like that explained it. He kept checking. I noticed the pattern then. Every few minutes, he'd open Tinder, scroll, send a message, then lock his phone and put it down for maybe 30 seconds before picking it up again. Like a reflex, like breathing. I stopped talking as much. Started answering instead. He didn't notice right away. He was too focused on his screen. Eventually, the quiet stretched long enough that he looked up. He asked if I was bored. The question annoyed me more than it should have. I asked him why he kept checking Tinder while sitting across from me. He didn't hesitate. He didn't get defensive. He didn't even lower his voice. He said he was double booked and seeing who canceled first. The words landed wrong, not because of jealousy or pride, but because of how casually he said it. Like he was talking about ride shares or delivery times, like I was a placeholder, not a person. He explained it further without realizing how bad it sounded, said dating apps were a numbers game. Said people flake all the time, so you had to stack plans. Said it didn't mean anything personal. Said it was just efficient. Efficient. I felt my face heat up, not from anger, but from embarrassment. I looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware of how exposed the booth felt. Like everyone could see I was sitting with someone actively waiting to replace me. I asked how many other dates he had that night. He shrugged and said 2 more, one nearby, one a little farther out. He said he'd go wherever worked out best. He went back to his phone like the conversation was over. I sat there in silence, my appetite gone. My food sat untouched. Every buzz from his phone felt louder now. Every swipe felt deliberate. I could almost picture the other women sitting somewhere else, checking their phones, waiting, unaware they were part of a queue. The worst part was that he was double booked. It was that he treated it like a game board, like pieces could be moved around without consequence, like feelings were optional features. I noticed something else then. His location was on, fully visible. I saw him glance at a map view, checking distances, timing things, calculating. I felt sick. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff. He looked up, surprised. Asked where I was going. I told him I was leaving. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He frowned, confused. Said we hadn't even given it a chance yet. Said I was being dramatic. Said this was just how dating worked now. That sentence stuck with me more than anything else he said. I grabbed my bag and walked out without looking back. The cool air outside hit me hard, like I had been holding my breath inside. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A message from him asking if I was serious. I unmatched him before the second message came through. I walked for a while, letting the noise fade out. My thoughts kept looping around the word efficient. How people like him saw others as options, not individuals. How easy it was to sit across from someone and still be somewhere else entirely. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I reopened Tinder using a backup account I barely used. Within minutes, his profile popped up. Recently active. Distance updated. Probably already sitting across from someone else, phone in hand, checking to see if another option was closer. I wondered if he told them the same thing, if he explained it as honestly, if anyone stayed. The next day, I told a friend about it. She laughed at first and stopped when she saw my face. She said it sounded exhausting. She said dating wasn't supposed to feel like standing in line. She was right. What disturbed me was the rejection or the disrespect. It was realizing how normalized it had become for some people to treat connection like a backup plan, like something you can swap out if a better option buzzed in your pocket. I still go on dates. I still believe in meeting people. But the second someone keeps checking their phone like I'm not there, I leave. I'd but ask why anymore. I already know. The moment that stuck with me didn't feel dramatic at the time. It felt responsible. That's what makes it worse now. It felt like one of those small adult choices you make to keep things calm and normal, the kind you don't question because everyone online tells you to be careful. If I could rewind the night, that's the moment it'd freeze and walk away. But I didn't know that yet. We matched late one night when I couldn't sleep and kept swiping out of boredom. Her profile was clean and cautious. Nothing flashy. Normal photos. Normal bio. She even mentioned safety in a way that felt reassuring, not paranoid. When we started talking, she asked questions slowly, thoughtfully, like she actually cared about who she was talking to instead of racing to meet. When we planned the date, she suggested a quiet tea place near a busy intersection. Lots of windows. Lots of foot traffic. She said she liked places where nothing could go wrong. I liked that too. I told myself this was what a healthy date looked like. She showed up exactly on time. Neat jacket. Hair pulled back. Calm smile. She ordered before sitting down, already knowing what she wanted. The whole thing felt balanced. Nothing rushed. Nothing intense. Just two people trying to see if conversation flowed. It did at first. We talked about boring stuff. Work stress. How dating apps felt exhausting. Places we wanted to visit but probably never would. She laughed softly, nodded, made eye contact without staring. She didn't touch her phone much. I remember thinking how refreshing that was. About halfway through, she shifted in her seat and said she got a weird question. She said she hoped I wouldn't take it the wrong way. She said it was for safety. She asked to see my ID. My first reaction was hesitation. My second was guilt for hesitating. Everything online tells you to respect boundaries, especially when someone frames it as safety. She said she had bad past dates. Said she just wanted to know she was sitting with who I said I was. She did ask to take it, just to see it. I pulled my wallet out. I still remember the weight of it in my hand. The little pause before I slid the card out. She leaned forward slightly, eyes focused, not curious so much as attentive. She looked at it carefully. Longer than I expected. She asked me to turn it so she could see the photo better. I did. She nodded, smiled, and handed it back like nothing had happened. She thanked me for understanding, said it meant a lot. I felt relieved, like I had passed some quiet test. The rest of the date went smoothly. Nothing weird. Nothing alarming. We finished our drinks, talked a bit longer, then parted ways with a casual hug. She said she'd text me later. I walked home feeling oddly proud of myself for being respectful and open. She never texted. The next morning, I figured she just wasn't interested. It happens. I unmasked her to avoid overthinking it and moved on with my day. By evening, the day already felt blurry like most of them do. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I usually don't, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was calm and official. Police. Asking if this was my name. My full name. My chest tightened instantly. They asked if I had been using Tinder recently. I said yes. They asked if I had created multiple profiles. I said no. They asked if I had been meeting men from the app under different names. I felt dizzy. The questions didn't line up with my life at all. I told them that. Told them there had to be some mistake. They said my identity had been used in a fake Tinder profile. Photos taken from somewhere else. Name matching mine exactly. Age matching. Location close enough to be believable. Multiple men had reported it after being lured into weird situations. Meetups that never happened. Requests for money. Threats. Confusion. They asked if I had shared my ad with anyone recently. My stomach dropped. The tea place flashed in my head, the quiet table, her calm smile, the way she studied the card just a little too long. They asked me to come down to the station to make a statement. The walk there felt unreal, like I was floating slightly above my body. I kept replaying the moment I handed over my id, the way it felt harmless, the way I had told myself I was doing the right thing. At the station, they showed me screenshots. The profile had my name, my age, my general area, messages written in a tone that wasn't me at all. Manipulative, erratic, sometimes friendly, sometimes cruel. Conversations stretched across days, multiple men at once. One photo had clearly been cropped from my social media, one I didn't even remember posting. Another was a blurry version of my id photo, taken at an angle, probably snapped quickly at the table. They told me she had likely used it to build credibility, to convince people she was real by showing proof, my proof. I sat there for a long time answering questions, explaining everything, when and where I met her, what she looked like, what she said. It all sounded fake out loud, like something you warned people about in a post, not something that actually happened to you. They said I was in trouble, that they believed me, that this kind of thing happened more than people realized. That didn't help. When I got home, I locked my door and sat on my bed in the dark. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from Tinder support, notifications about suspicious activity, emails warning me to secure my accounts. I felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain, like my name didn't belong to me anymore, like someone else had worn it around for a night and done damage I couldn't see yet. Over the next few days, I had to file reports, change passwords, lock down profiles, explain the situation to people I didn't want involved. Every time I said it out loud, it felt more unreal. They never found her. The account vanished. The number she used went dead. The T-Place cameras caught her face, but it didn't lead anywhere fast enough. She slipped back into whatever system she was already working inside. Sometimes I still think about how calm she was, how careful, how she framed everything as safety, how easily I handed over something that wasn't meant to leave my pocket. I had a bit on Tinder since, not because I think everyone is like that, but because I don't trust myself not to be polite when I should be protective. My ed stays buried now, deep in my wallet. I don't take it out unless I have to. And whenever someone mentions safety on a date, my chest tightens just a little, remembering how the scariest part of that night wasn't fear. It was how normal it felt. I should have trusted the feeling I had when he wouldn't stop insisting on cooking. It wasn't romantic insistence either. It was rigid, like this was the plan and anything else would break the night. I suggested meeting out first. He brushed it off. Said restaurants were awkward. Said his place was cleaner. Said cooking told you everything you needed to know about a person. I laughed it off and told myself I was being dramatic for hesitating. I was. His apartment was in one of those boxy complexes where every hallway smells the same and you can't tell which floor you're on without checking the numbers twice. I stood outside his door for a second longer than necessary, listening to muffled sounds inside, wondering if I should just turn around. I didn't. I knocked. He opened the door already smiling too hard, apron on, music playing from a speaker that sounded like it was struggling. The place was small but aggressively tidy, like he had cleaned everything 5 minutes before I arrived and didn't know where to put the nervous energy after. Counters wiped. Candles unlit, but placed carefully. Ingredients laid out like a cooking show. He talked nonstop as soon as I stepped in, explaining what he was making, why he chose it, how long he'd been perfecting the recipe. I nodded and set my bag down, feeling like a guest who had walked into a performance already in progress. The kitchen and living room were basically the same space. One wrong step, and you're in the other. He handed me a drink without asking what I wanted. It tasted too strong. I sipped it slowly while he heated oil in a pan and narrated every move. I noticed right away he wasn't relaxed. His hands shook slightly when he reached for utensils. He kept checking the stove like it might move. He laughed at things that weren't jokes. I asked if he cooked like this often. He said all the time, too fast. The oil started smoking more than it should have. I mentioned it gently. He waved it off. Said it was supposed to do that. He added food to the pan too quickly. The oil popped violently, splashing onto the stovetop. Then the flame jumped. It wasn't huge at first, just a flare, bright and sudden. He froze like his brain stalled out. The fire climbed the side of the pan, looking upward in a way that felt wrong immediately. I stepped back instinctively. My heart started pounding. I told him to turn off the stove. He didn't move. He just stared at it like he was watching a magic trick go bad. The fire grew fast, way faster than I expected. It caught grease on the stove and flared higher. Smoke filled the air, thick and bitter. The music kept playing, upbeat and wrong. He panicked. Not a kind of panic where someone tries things badly. The kind where logic leaves completely. He shouted something I couldn't make out and then did the worst possible thing. He unzipped his pants. I didn't understand what he was doing until it was already happening. He leaned forward and peed on the stove, right onto the fire, like his body was acting on some ancient instinct that did belong indoors. The smell was immediate and horrifying. Hot grease, burning oil, and something else that made my stomach flip. The fire sputtered but didn't go out. It spread instead, reacting violently. I screamed and backed toward the door. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. He yelled too, slipping slightly, still trying to aim like this was a solution he was committed to. The smoke alarm started screaming, high and relentless. Neighbors started shouting through the walls. He finally stepped back, staring at the mess he'd made, eyes wide and empty. I grabbed my bag and tried the door. It opened, thank God. I ran into the hallway, coughing, heart racing, my head spinning with the sheer absurdity of what I had just seen. Someone had already called emergency services. I could hear sirens growing louder as I stood there in the hallway, frozen, unsure if I should leave completely or stay in case I was needed. Smoke poured out from under his door now. The firefighters arrived fast, red lights flashing through the windows at the end of the hall. Boots pounding up the stairs. They rushed past me, hoses and gear clanking, faces focused and unreadable. One of them asked if anyone was inside. I pointed weakly to the apartment and nodded. My voice wouldn't work. They went in. More shouting, more chaos, water spraying. The smoke alarm finally cut out, replaced by the sound of things being moved and extinguished. After a few minutes that felt like an hour, they came back out, guiding him with them. He had a blanket wrapped around his waist now, face pale, eyes darting everywhere but at me. He tried to talk, tried to laugh it off, tried to explain to the firefighters that it was a first date mishap, like that phrase could shrink what had happened into something cute and forgivable. The firefighters did laugh. One of them looked at me with a mix of concern and disbelief. Another shook their head slowly like they'd seen a lot, but this was still new somehow. They asked if I knew him well. I said no. I said this was the first time I'd been there. My voice finally came back, shaky but clear. They nodded and kept asking him questions about the fire, about what he did, about why he thought that was a good idea. He kept talking over himself, words tumbling out uselessly. Neighbors gathered in the hallway, whispering, staring, phones out. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else muttered something about idiots. One firefighter told me I could go, said I was lucky. That word stuck with me. I didn't argue. I walked down the stairs on legs that barely felt like mine. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean compared to the smoke. I stood there watching them finish up, watching him sit on the curb with a blanket around his shoulders, still trying to explain himself to anyone who would listen. My phone buzzed. A Tinder notification from him. An apology. A joke. Something about bad timing. I deleted the app right there on the sidewalk. I walked home without looking back. Every time I smelled something burning for weeks after, my stomach turned. Not because of the fire, but because of the moment he chose the worst possible instinct and committed to it without thinking about the person standing right there with him. I never told that story out loud for a long time because it sounds fake, like something that couldn't really happen. But it did. And sometimes the most disturbing nights aren't scary because of danger, but because of how fast someone can unravel in front of you. I knew the night was going sideways before the first drink even hit the table. Not in a loud warning way, just that quiet itch you get when something feels staged, and you can't tell why yet. The bar was already packed for a weeknight, all sticky floors and neon signs humming like they were tired. I almost turned around at the door, but I had already walked there and my phone battery was low, so I stayed. That's how most bad nights start for me. Not with danger, just with laziness. We matched earlier that day. Fast replies. Bold jokes. She felt confident in a way that didn't ask permission. When she suggested this bar, she made it sound like she owned the place emotionally, like it was part of her routine. I got there first and grabbed 2 stools at the end of the bar, the kind where you feel exposed but also impossible to corner. The bartender slid me a menu I didn't read. I ordered something simple that cost $5 and waited. She arrived already smiling, already loud, already acting like we were mid-conversation. She hugged me like she had known me longer than an half scroll. She ordered shots immediately, not asking if I wanted one, just telling the bartender what to pour. I should have slowed it down right there. I didn't. The first shot burned. The second went down easier. She laughed a lot, leaned in close, talked fast. She told stories that didn't quite line up, but she made them entertaining enough that I didn't stop her to question details. She had that energy where you feel like calling someone out would kill the vibe, and the vibe was doing a lot of the work. Then she made it a game. She dared me to take a shot every time she lied. She said it like a joke, but her eyes held on mine just long enough that I knew she meant it at least a little. I laughed and agreed because it felt playful and stupid and harmless. I didn't expect it to turn into a count. She started with easy stuff, where she was from, what she did for work. Little inconsistencies that could pass as exaggeration. I took the third shot because at that point it felt like I had to commit. The bartender raised an eyebrow, but poured anyway. By the fourth shot, my head felt warm and my thoughts slowed just enough to make everything fuzzy at the edges. She clapped and smiled like she had won something. I realized then that she wasn't drinking much herself. She sipped. Barely. I noticed too late. The bar noise swelled around us. People bumped shoulders. Glasses clinked. Music shifted. I felt light but also unsteady, like I had stepped onto a moving sidewalk without realizing it. She leaned back on her stool and checked her phone, scrolling fast and setting it face down. She asked questions about me but didn't really listen to the answers. It felt like she was waiting for something. I asked what the deal was with the lying game. She shrugged and said it kept things interesting. That's when a guy walked in and stopped dead in his tracks. I didn't notice him at first. I was focused on the bar mirror, on my own flushed face, on trying to slow my breathing. Then I felt the shift, the way the air tightens when someone brings tension in with them. He walked straight toward us. He didn't look angry. That scared me more. He looked tired, like this was his first time doing this. He scanned the bar, then locked eyes with me and nodded once, like he was confirming something he already suspected. She stiffened beside me, not surprised, annoyed. He stood close enough that I could smell his cologne. He looked at her, then at me again. His expression didn't change. He said my name like it was a label he had already filed away. Then he said he recognized me. My stomach dropped. He explained calmly that I was number 6, not in a bragging way, not dramatic, just factual. Tinder guy number 6. Apparently he had seen my picture before. Apparently she had shown it to him without realizing, or maybe realizing and not caring. The word fiancé landed in my head like a delayed echo. It didn't make sense at first. I looked at her, waiting for denial, laughter, something. She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath like this was inconvenient timing. Everything around us went quiet in my ears, even though the bar stayed loud. I could feel my pulse in my neck. My mouth tasted like cheap liquor and regret. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making a scene. That somehow made it worse. He said he had a list, that he had names and dates and screenshots, that he had been keeping track, that he just wanted to see who else was real. I realized then that the shots weren't a joke. They were a distraction, a way to keep me off balance, a way to make sure I wouldn't notice how calculated the night was. The bartender hovered nearby, sensing something was wrong but not stepping in yet. People glanced over, curious. I felt like I was on display, drunker than I meant to be, caught in the middle of something that started long before I showed up. She finally laughed and said it wasn't that serious, that it was just a game, that everyone needed to relax. The word relax felt insulting in that moment. He didn't respond to her. He kept his eyes on me. He apologized to me for pulling me into it. That apology felt heavier than anger would have. He said he was done, said he just needed confirmation. Then he walked out. She didn't chase him. She ordered another drink. That was the moment I knew I needed to leave. My legs felt unsteady as I slid off the stool. I dropped cash on the bar without counting. It was more than enough. The bartender nodded like he understood. She asked where I was going like nothing had happened. I didn't answer. I walked past her and out the door, the cool air hitting my face like a reset button that didn't fully work. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, trying to get my balance. The streetlights blurred slightly. My phone buzzed with a notification from Tinder. A message from her. I didn't open it. I unmatched and blocked without reading. The walk home felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed the word 6 in my head, not because I felt special, but because it meant there were 5 others who probably walked away feeling just as stupid. The next morning, my head hurt and my memories came back in fragments. The shots, the smile, the way she watched instead of drank, the way he said my name like it was already part of a file. I don't play drinking games on dates anymore. I don't let someone else control the pace, and I definitely don't laugh when something feels like a test. That night didn't end in chaos. No yelling, no police, just a quiet realization that some people treat others like disposable proof. The second I walked into that bar, I felt like I was stepping into the wrong night. Not danger exactly, just misalignment. Like showing up to a party a day early. The lights were too bright for how late it was. The music was too upbeat for the tired faces sitting at the bar, and the big tip on the wall kept switching between sports and random screensavers. I almost turned around, but I didn't. I never do. We had agreed to meet there because he said it was neutral. Public, easy. I got there first and grabbed a small table near the wall, close enough to the bar that I could flag someone down if I needed to. I ordered a drink that cost $6 and watched people come in and out while I waited. He showed up maybe 10 minutes later, already smiling too much. Not creepy smiling, just overcompensating. He hugged me without asking, sat down fast, and immediately started talking like he was worried silence might kill him. He talked about his day, his job, his gym routine, things that didn't need that much detail. I nodded along, trying to match his energy. Everything felt normal at first. Slightly annoying, maybe, but normal. The bar was busy. Groups of friends crowded around high tables. A couple sat directly behind me, close enough that I could hear pieces of their conversation if I focused. I didn't pay them much attention. I had no reason to. His phone sat face up on the table. That was the first tiny red flag. Most people keep it face down or tucked away. His kept lighting up every few minutes. He never opened the messages, just glanced and kept talking. I noticed Tinder notifications popping up on the screen, but I didn't say anything. We weren't exclusive. It was a first meet. It didn't technically matter. Still, it felt off, like he wasn't even pretending to be present. About 20 minutes in, he mentioned the bar had good towels. Said he liked places where he could watch something while talking. Before I could respond, he leaned back and started messing with his phone settings. I assumed he was adjusting volume or brightness or something pointless. Then the two behind the bar went black for half a second, and then his phone appeared on it. Full screen. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. It took my brain a moment to catch up. His lock screen flashed, then his home screen. Then Tinder opened automatically like it had been running already. The bar went quiet in waves. People noticed one by one. Heads turned. Conversations dropped off. The tip was right above the bar, impossible to miss. Messages filled the screen. Not subtle ones. Not polite ones. Graphic enough that my face burned instantly. I won't repeat them here, but they were unmistakable. Flirtatious turned explicit turned personal. Multiple threads. Different names. Different profile pictures. Timestamps from earlier that day. Some from minutes ago. I froze. He froze too, but in a different way. His smile dropped. His face drained of color. He jumped up, fumbling with his phone, tapping wildly, trying to disconnect. Every second felt like a minute. The messages kept rolling in. New notifications popped up in real time, sliding down the screen like a cruel joke. More names, more words, more proof that he had been juggling conversations nonstop. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop even further. One of the profile pictures on the screen matched the woman sitting behind me. I recognized her instantly. Same jacket, same hair, same face. The name on the message matched the one I had heard her friend say earlier. The timestamp was from less than an hour ago. My chest tightened. I slowly turned my head just enough to look behind me. She was staring at the two. Her mouth was slightly open. Her face had gone pale. Her friend leaned in, whispering urgently, pointing at the screen. The realization hit her hard and fast. I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed. The bar erupted into noise. Laughter. Gasps. Someone yelled something I couldn't make out. The bartender cursed under their breath and rushed to the two controls. The screen finally went black again. Too late. Everyone had seen it. He stood there, foam clutched in both hands, breathing hard like he had just run a mile. He didn't look at me. He could. He stared at the floor like it might open up and save him. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The humiliation wasn't just his. It spilled over onto me, onto the woman behind me, onto everyone dragged into his mess without consent. The woman behind me stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped loudly. She said his name out loud, sharp and clear. That guy's attention. He looked up then, eyes wide, like he was seeing a ghost. She walked past me without acknowledging my presence and stood directly in front of him. Her friend followed close behind. The bar watched openly now. No one pretended not to stare. I grabbed my bag and stood up slowly, trying to disappear. My legs felt shaky. I didn't want to be there when whatever came next happened. As I stepped away, I heard the woman say something I couldn't hear clearly, but the tone said enough. Betrayal, shock, anger, all layered together. I walked toward the door, my heart racing. The air felt thick, like I had to push through it. Outside, the night felt louder than before. Cars passed. People laughed on the sidewalk. Normal life continued like nothing had happened. I stood there for a minute, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed in my hand. A Tinder notification. It was him. Apology messages stacked on top of each other. Excuses. Panic. Attempts to explain what couldn't be explained. I unmatched him without reading past the first line. A few seconds later, another notification popped up. A message from the woman who had been sitting behind me. She said she was sorry I got caught up in it. Said she had no idea of either. Said she was shaking. I replied with a short message saying same, and then unmasked her too. It felt cleaner that way. I walked home instead of calling a ride. My thoughts looped over the moment the screen lit up. How fast everything unraveled. How one wrong tap turned private lies into public truth. Now, whenever I see a barred flicker or change screens, my stomach tightens. I watch people with their phones more closely. Not because I think it will happen again, but because I know it can. That night taught me how thin the line is between anonymous and expose. How quickly other people's secrets can become your problem. The weird part is that the night didn't feel dramatic at all when it started. It felt flat, almost boring, like one of those evenings you already know won't turn into anything, but you go anyway because staying home feels worse. I remember thinking I might leave early. I remember thinking I'd probably forget her name by morning. That thought didn't age well. We met at a casual brewery-style place with picnic tables inside and long strings of lights hanging from the ceiling. It smelled like fries and metal and something sweet I couldn't place. The kind of place where everyone talks a little louder than they need to. I got there first and grabbed a seat near the wall so I wouldn't feel exposed. My drink cost $7 and tasted like it had been sitting too long. She showed up a few minutes later wearing a jacket too big for her, and that half smile people use when they're not sure yet. She seemed nervous but not in a red flag way. More like first date jitters. We talked easily at first. Jobs, music, dumb stories about bad dates. Nothing deep. Nothing strange. She laughed at the right moments. Checked her phone occasionally, but didn't hide it. About 15 minutes in, she said she needed to use the bathroom. She stood up quickly, grabbed her phone, and we both did that awkward nod people do when they expect to be back in a minute. I watched her weave through the tables toward the back hallway where the bathrooms were. I waited. At first, I didn't think anything of it. People take time. Lines happen. I scrolled through my phone, took a sip, looked around. The place was busy but not packed. I could see the hallway entrance clearly. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I checked the hallway again. No sign of her. I told myself she probably ran into someone she knew or was just fixing her makeup or something normal. I didn't want to be that person who panics too early. Another 5 minutes went by. My drink was half gone. The chair across from me sat empty, still warm from when she stood up. That detail stuck with me later more than it should have. I started to feel that slow creeping embarrassment, the kind where you wonder if everyone around you can tell you've been ditched. I glanced toward the bar, pretending I was just enjoying the atmosphere. I debated paying and leaving quietly. Then someone sat down across from me. At first, I assumed it was her. The movement was sudden, and my brain filled in the expected shape before my eyes caught up. But when I looked up, it wasn't her. It was a guy. Around my age, maybe a little older, plain clothes, tired eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't look angry either. He looked focused, like this wasn't emotional for him anymore, like he had moved past that part already. I froze. My body went stiff in a way I couldn't control. I looked past him toward the hallway, thinking maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he grabbed the wrong seat. He didn't move. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table like he had done this before. He glanced at the empty chair next to him and back at me. He asked which app I met her on. Not casually, not curious. Methodical, like he was checking the box. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. My first instinct was to lie, but the words stuck in my throat. I told him Tinder because it was already obvious something was wrong and lying felt pointless. He nodded slowly, pulled his phone out, tapped a few times, then showed me the screen. It was a list. Screenshots stacked in folders. Names, dates, times, locations, different apps labeled clearly. Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. Notes under each one. Evidence organized in a way that made my skin crawl. He told me he was her boyfriend, not ex, not complicated, current. He said he'd been collecting proof for weeks, said he didn't want to confront her without knowing everything, said he wanted facts, not excuses. I sat there, barely breathing, listening as he explained without raising his voice. Apparently this was the first time. Not even close. She would bring dates to places she knew he'd get access easily. Places he already had reason to be nearby. She would excuse herself and leave quietly, knowing he'd take over the table. I realized then that she was never coming back from the bathroom. He asked me how long we'd been talking, how many times we'd met, if she had said anything about being single. His questions were calm but relentless. Every answer I gave felt like another brick being added to a wall I didn't ask to help build. Around us, the place buzzed with noise and laughter. People ate and drank and leaned into each other. No one noticed what was happening at our table. No one knew I was sitting in the middle of someone else's relationship collapse. He showed me more screenshots, messages from her phone, lies laid out cleanly, things she told me copied word for word to other people. Same jokes, same timing, like she was running multiple versions of the same conversation at once. I felt stupid, not because I had done something wrong, but because I had assumed I was part of something real, because I had noticed the cracks, because I had trusted the wrong kind of normal. He thanked me for being honest. The word thanks didn't belong in the moment, but he said it anyway. Then he stood up, picked up the chair she had been sitting in, and slid it back under the table like he was resetting the scene. Before he left, he told me she would probably block me, that she always did once things reached this point. He told me not to take it personally. That was just how she cleaned up loose ends. Then he walked away toward the exit, leaving me alone with an empty chair and a half-finished drink. I sat there for a long time after, longer than made sense. I watched people come and go. I watched the hallway where she had disappeared. I kept expecting her to come back and laugh it off, like it was some prank or misunderstanding. She never did. Eventually, I paid and left. The night air felt cooler than it should have. My phone buzzed once as I walked. A Tinder notification. Her profile had unmatched me. Erased. Gone. On the way home, I kept replaying the moment she stood up. How casual it was. How confident. Like she knew exactly what would happen next. Sometimes I still think about that chair. How easily someone else filled it. How quickly the story changed hands. The night started with a feeling like I had already missed a step and didn't know which one. Not nervous exactly, just slightly off balance, like when you walk downstairs and think there's one more step than there actually is. I ignored it because that's what I always do. I told myself it was just another Tinder me, another face, another story that would fade by morning. We met at a public garden that stayed open late, one of those places with benches and string lights and couples pretending not to notice each other. He suggested it because he said he liked quiet. That should have been my first pause. Quiet sounds nice until it doesn't. Still, it felt safe enough. Open space. People around. I got there early and sat on a bench near the path, scrolling until my phone dipped into low battery. He arrived exactly on time. Not early, not late, right on the minute. He wore clean clothes, neutral colors, nothing memorable. He smiled politely and sat down with space between us, hands folded on his knees like he was waiting for instructions. The first few minutes felt normal. Weather talk, work talk, surface level stuff. His voice was calm and even, almost soothing. He didn't interrupt, didn't overshare. If anything, he felt a little too put together, like he had practiced being casual. Then the questions started to shift. He asked if I wanted kids someday, not in a playful future way, but like he was checking a box. I answered honestly, trying to keep it light. He nodded and made a mental note, eyes unfocused for a second like he was writing it down somewhere in his head. Then he asked about marriage. Not whether I believe in it, but whether I saw it happening for me. Timeline stuff. Practical stuff. Again, I answered, feeling a little weird but telling myself some people are just upfront. Then he asked where I planned to be buried. The word landed heavy. The garden noise seemed to dip around us. I laughed at first because it felt absurd, like he had jumped 5 chapters ahead. I thought maybe he was joking in a dark way. He didn't laugh back. He just watched me, waiting for an answer. I asked why he wanted to know. He said it mattered. He said location planning was important long term. The way he said long term made my stomach tighten. I gave a vague answer, trying to move past it. He nodded again. Another mental note. Then he reached into his backpack. He pulled out a small notebook. Worn. Dog-eared. The kind of thing someone carries everywhere. He didn't hide it or hesitate. He just opened it on his lap like it was normal. At first, I thought it was a journal. Then I saw the pages. Names. Dates, locations. Little marks next to each one. Short notes in the margins. Personality traits. Habits. Things like adaptable, emotional stability, family proximity. I leaned in without meaning to, my heart starting to race. He noticed my expression and turned the notebook slightly so I could see better. He explained it calmly, like he was showing me a playlist. He told me he ranked his Tinder dates based on long-term survivability. Not compatibility. Not chemistry. Survivability. He said it was about romance. It was about planning. About being realistic. About knowing who would last when things got hard. He tapped the page like it was data. I realized my name was already there. Written in pencil. Light but clear. Next to it were numbers, scores, little arrows pointing up or down. Notes about my answers so far. Kids maybe. Marriage flexible. Burial undecided. My chest felt tight. I looked around the garden. People still walked by. Laughter drifted from somewhere near the fountain. No one noticed us. No one knew what I was sitting next to. I asked how many people were in the notebook. He flipped back through pages. There were dozens. Maybe more. Months worth. Maybe years. He said he updated it after every date. Said patterns mattered more than feelings. He talked about resourcefulness. Adaptability. How some people panic and others plan. He said he needed someone who could handle worst-case scenarios. He didn't explain what those were. I noticed some names had lines through them. Others had stars. Some had notes written darker, pressed harder into the page like he had been frustrated while writing them. One page had a list at the top labeled Final Tier. My name was there. I asked what survivability meant to him. He paused, thinking carefully. Then he said it meant who would make it, who wouldn't slow things down, who could be depended on when systems failed. Systems. The word echoed in my head. I thought about the way he arrived exactly on time, the way he sat, the way he asked questions like a form, the way he watched instead of reacted. He asked if I wanted to see my score. That was the moment my body fully caught up. My hands felt cold. My heart pounded so loud I worried he could hear it. I told him I needed to use the bathroom even though there wasn't one nearby. I stood up, backing away slightly. He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded and closed the notebook carefully, sliding it back into his bag like it was fragile. I walked down the path, not running, not turning back. My legs felt shaky but steady enough to carry me. Once I was far enough, I pulled my phone out and unmatched him with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I didn't go home right away. I walked until my battery died and then kept walking anyway. Every bench looked suspicious. Every backpack made my skin crawl. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me and I searched his name online. Nothing obvious came up. No articles. No warnings. Just a normal digital footprint, which somehow made it worse. I keep thinking about how easily he said it. Survivability. Like people were variables. Like dating was a simulation and he was just trying to win. I still think about that notebook sometimes. How many names are still being added? How many benches and caves and gardens are part of some quiet ranking system? I didn't feel nervous walking there, which is probably why the whole thing messed with me so much after. Usually I overthink every step. That night I didn't. My phone was at 10%, my headphones were dead, and I was already late leaving the house. It felt rushed and normal and forgettable, like a night that would blur together with the rest of them. She had warned me ahead of time that she might bring her best friend. She said it casually, like a footnote, just to feel safe. I said I was fine without really thinking about it. I figured the friend would sit nearby or show up for a bit and leave. I'd seen that kind of thing before. It never felt like a big deal. We met at a busy taco spot that stayed loud no matter what time it was. Bright walls, long benches, people constantly coming and going. It felt public enough to be safe and chaotic enough to hide in. I got there first and stood near the counter, pretending to read the menu even though I'd already read it online. They walked in together. At first glance, I couldn't tell which one was her. That should have been my first clue. Both about the same height. Both wearing dark jackets. Similar hair color pulled back in low ponytails. One of them smiled first and waved. I assumed that was her. She stepped forward, hugged me quickly, and introduced her friend. We grabbed a table near the back where the noise dulled a bit. They sat across from me, shoulder to shoulder. The seating was tight, so they leaned in toward each other naturally. I tried to focus on the one I thought was my date. She laughed easily, made eye contact, asked me questions. The friend chimed in sometimes, but mostly stayed quiet, scrolling on her phone. It felt fine. Not amazing, not awkward. Just fine. We ordered food. Mine came out to $9. We talked about work and random internet stuff. I noticed the friend watching me more than her phone, but I figured she was just protective. No red flags. No alarms. Just a normal double table situation. After about 20 minutes, one of them suggested switching seats so the friend could plug her phone into the wall outlet. It was said so casually that I didn't question it. They stood up, shuffled around the table, sat back down. Same faces, same jackets, same hair, different positions. I kept talking. That's the part that makes my stomach turn when I think about it. I didn't notice right away. The lighting was bad. The noise was loud. I was focused on telling a story about something dumb that happened at work. The woman across from me laughed, nodded, reacted at the right moments. It felt seamless. But something was off. The responses felt slightly delayed. The smile didn't hit the same way. The eye contact felt different. Like I was talking to someone who knew the rhythm but not the context. I brushed it off. People get tired. Vibes shift. It happens. Then I mentioned something specific from our Tinder chat. An inside joke Wed made about a bad movie. The woman across from me blinked. Just once. Then laughed anyway like she understood. The laugh was half a second too late. My chest tightened. I tested it without meaning to. Brought up another detail. Something personal Shed told me. The reaction was wrong again. Polite. Vague. Like someone filling in blanks they shouldn't need to. I glanced to the side at the other woman. She was watching me closely now. Not smiling. Not scrolling. Just watching. When our eyes met, she looked away fast. That's when it hit me. They had switched more than seats. I felt heat rush to my face. My brain replayed the last 20 minutes at double speed. The jokes, the smiles, the flirting, all aimed at the wrong person. Someone who was my match. Someone who knew exactly what was happening. My actual date sat a seat away, silent, observing. letting it happen. I stopped mid-sentence. The table felt too small suddenly. The noise around us got louder. My heart pounded in my ears. I didn't know what to do without making a scene. I didn't want to accuse anyone out loud. I didn't even know how to untangle it cleanly. The woman across from me tilted her head, waiting for me to continue. Her expression wasn't confused. It was curious, like she was studying my reaction. I asked to use the bathroom and stood up too fast. My chair scraped loudly. I didn't look at either of them as I walked away. In the mirror, my face looked flushed and tense. I ran cold water over my wrists and stared at myself, trying to ground my thoughts. When I came back, they were whispering to each other. They stopped when they saw me. The friend had switched back to the original seat. The one I thought was my date was smiling again like nothing had happened. She asked if I was okay. I nodded even though I wasn't. I sat down slowly. The energy at the table felt thick now, heavy with something unspoken. I didn't know if I should call it out or pretend it didn't happen. I tried to continue the date, but the words felt wrong in my mouth. Every laugh felt forced. Every glance between them felt loaded. I couldn't stop thinking about how intentional it all felt. How planned. How they had tested me without telling me the rules. After a few minutes, the friend said she was going to step outside and give us space. She grabbed her jacket and left without looking at me. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was worse. My date leaned forward, smiling, acting like everything was back on track. She asked what I wanted to do next. Her tone was light, almost playful, like the last half hour hadn't happened. I couldn't do it. I told her I had to go, that something came up. I stood before she could respond. She looked surprised, then annoyed, then flat. She didn't argue, just nodded. I left cash on the table and walked out. The friend was standing outside, leaning against the wall, phone in hand. She looked up as I passed. Our eyes met. She smiled. That smile followed me all the way home. Later that night, I had matched her. She didn't message. Didn't ask what happened. The next day, her profile was gone. Either unmatched or deleted. I'll never know. Sometimes I think about how easily it worked. How familiar they looked. How quickly my brain filled in the gaps. How 20 minutes was all it took. I still meet people in public places. I still go on dates, but I pay attention now in a way I didn't before. Not out of fear. More like awareness that some people treat others like a test instead of a person. I noticed the phone before I noticed him. That probably sounds weird, but the way it kept lighting up felt louder than the room. We hadn't even sat down yet, and his screen flashed again and again on the table like it was impatient. Every time it did, he flipped it face down with his practiced motion, like he'd done it 100 times before. I told myself it was nothing. I always tell myself that at first. We met at a small noodle place we both claimed was our favorite, even though neither of us had been there in years. It was tucked between a pharmacy and a closed bookstore, the kind of spot people forget exists. Warm inside, fogged windows, too many tables squeezed together. I liked it because it felt low pressure. No one dressed up there. No one expected anything. He was already there when I arrived, sitting stiffly, back straight, hands folded. He smiled fast when he saw me, like he was trying to hit the right timing. He looked normal. Clean. Average. Nothing that set off alarms. That's the part that still messes with me. We ordered food and sat down. Right away, his phone lit up again. He glanced at it and sighed quietly, like he was annoyed but also used to it. I asked if everything was okay. He said yeah, just his mom checking in. He rolled his eyes a little like it was embarrassing. I laughed because that seemed relatable. Some moms are like that. But then it happened again, and again. Every few minutes, screen lighting up. Name at the top reading Mom. Always Mom. Never anything else. He never answered, just silenced it and apologized. Said she worried too much. Said she didn't like him meeting people online. The way he said it felt rehearsed, like he had a line ready. Still, I nodded along. I didn't want to sound suspicious over something so normal. Mom's text. That's life. We started talking more, getting into that early date rhythm. Surface level stuff at first, then slightly deeper. Jobs. Past relationships. What we wanted eventually. He dodged certain questions smoothly, steering things back to safer topics. Every time the phone lit up, his jaw tightened a little more. Halfway through eating, I realized he never took the phone off the table. Not once. Most people shove it in their pocket or bag eventually. He kept it right there, like he needed to see it even when he pretended not to, like he was waiting for something. Another text. Mom again. This time he didn't flip it over right away. I caught a glimpse of the screen. Multiple messages stacked, missed calls. The notification bar was full. My stomach sank just a bit. I asked if she needed something urgently. He said no, she was dramatic. Said she'd calm down eventually. He smiled, but his eyes kept flicking toward the door. That's when I started to feel watched. Not by him, but by the room. Like something was about to happen and the space knew it before I did. The noise around us felt thinner. Laughter from another table sounded forced. Forks scraped too loud against plates. Then the door flew open. A woman stormed in like a wave crashing against the shore. She didn't hesitate. Didn't look around to find him. She locked onto our table immediately, like she'd been here before. Her face was red, eyes wild, breathing heavy. People turned. Chairs shifted. The whole place froze in that way public spaces do when something personal spills out. She started screaming before she even reached us. Not words I could repeat here, just rage poured into sound. She pointed at him, then at me. Her voice cracked and then got louder, bouncing off the walls. She yelled that I was his third Tinder date that week, that she was done being lied to, that she was his mom. That word hit like a slap. Not mom. Wife. Everything stopped making sense all at once. My ears rang. I looked at him, waiting for denial, confusion, something. He didn't look surprised. He looked caught, shoulders slumped, head down, like a kid who knew the principal was calling their name. She kept yelling. Details spilled out in pieces. Weeks of this. Different names saved in his phone. Different excuses. Him telling her he was with coworkers or family while he met strangers for noodles and coffee and drinks. Her tracking him through that same phone head kept face down on the table. People stared openly now. Someone whispered. Someone else pulled out their phone. A staff hovered near the counter, unsure what to do. I sat there frozen, hands in my lap, heat rushing to my face. I felt stupid, exposed, like I'd been dragged on stage without agreeing to be part of the show. She finally stopped shoving long enough to breathe. Then she laughed this sharp, broken laugh that made my skin crawl. She told me she wasn't mad at me, that I wasn't the first, probably wouldn't be the last. She said she just wanted me to know exactly who I was sitting with. Then she threw his phone onto the table. It landed inches from my plate. The screen lit up. Tinder notifications everywhere. Unread messages. Matches. Active conversations. Proof glowing bright under the restaurant lights. She turned and walked out just as fast as she came in. The door slammed behind her. The room stayed silent for a few seconds too long. He didn't chase her. He didn't look at me. He just sat there, staring at the phone like it had betrayed him instead of the other way around. The staff finally stepped in, asking if everything was okay, if they needed to call someone. He shook his head and mumbled something I couldn't hear. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything at all. I grabbed my bag and walked past him, past the staring tables, past the door that still vibrated from being slammed. Outside, the air felt unreal. Too quiet. My hands shook as I pulled my jacket tighter around me. I walked without direction for a while, letting the noise drain out of my head. Later that night, I opened Tinder. His profile was gone, unmatched, vanished, like he had never existed, like that whole night was something I imagined. But I still remember the phone lighting up, the name at the top, Mom, over and over, like a warning I chose not to read correctly. I should have known the night was going to be weird the second she picked the location. Not because it was sketchy, but because it was too specific. She didn't say downtown or coffee shop or anywhere casual. She said the cafe across from the police station. Not near it. Not around there. Directly across. She said it was for safety. Hers and mine. I remember laughing a little when I read that message, thinking she was just cautious for joking in a dry way. Now I wish I had trusted the uneasy pause I felt instead. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going, which is wild considering where I ended up. I just threw on a hoodie, grabbed my wallet, and headed out. The area around the station always felt stiff, like the air knew where it was. Wide streets, bright lights, cameras on every corner. The cafe sat right across the road, all glass windows and white walls, like it wanted everyone inside to feel seen at all times. I got there early and picked a table by the window. From where I sat, I could see the front doors of the station. Officers going in and out. Patrol cars pulling up and leaving. It was oddly comforting at first. I ordered a drink that cost $5 and watched the street like I was waiting for a bus. She showed up right on time. That alone should have been a sign. Most Tinder dates are late or early or awkward about it. She walked in like she had a schedule. Neat outfit. Hair pulled back. Eyes alert. She scanned the room before spotting me, then smiled like she had just clocked in somewhere. We sat down and things felt normal enough. She talked easily, asked questions, laughed at the right moments, but there was something off in the rhythm, like she was following a script she had read too many times. Every so often, her eyes drifted to the window, not casually, deliberately, like she was checking something. I noticed she positioned herself so she faced the police station directly. Her back never turned to it. Even when she leaned in, her body stayed angled toward the glass. She said she always picked public places, said it made her feel better. I nodded along. I didn't want to sound paranoid myself. About halfway through, she asked me to confirm my full name. Not in a flirty way, just straight, first and last. I hesitated, then told her. She nodded like she was ticking something off mentally. Then she asked what I did for work, what my usual schedule looked like, if I lived nearby. The questions stacked up faster than normal date curiosity. I told myself she was just thorough. Maybe she had bad dates. Maybe she was anxious. The police station across the street hummed with activity, lights flashing every few minutes. I felt oddly exposed, like I was sitting on a stage. Then 2 officers walked into the cafe. They didn't rush. They didn't scan the room like something was wrong. They walked straight to our table. One stood slightly to the side. The other stayed back. The way they positioned themselves made my chest tighten instantly. They asked for my name. I gave it, confused. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. They asked if I knew her well. I said we had just met. I looked at her, waiting for her to explain, to laugh, to say it was some misunderstanding. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look scared. She looked tired. The officers asked me to step outside with them. People stared. Forks paused. The cafe noise dipped like someone turned the volume down. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Outside, the air felt sharp. The police station loomed across the street, closer now, heavier. One of the officers asked why my name was listed as a contact connected to an ongoing investigation. The words didn't make sense at first. They felt like they were meant for someone else. I told them I had no idea what they were talking about, that I had just met her, that we matched on Tinder. That was when everything shifted. They told me she'd been using dates as alibis, meeting men in public, near police stations, cameras everywhere. Time-stamped proof, names logged, faces caught on video. Whenever something happened elsewhere, she could point to a location, a time, a person she was with. Someone who didn't know he was part of a pattern. My stomach dropped. I thought back to her questions. My full name, my schedule, where I live. It all clicked in a way that made my skin crawl. They asked if she had ever mentioned legal trouble, if she had asked me to confirm times, if she had taken photos. I realized she had snapped a picture of her drink earlier, the window clearly in the background, the station lights visible through the glass. The officers asked me to wait while they went back inside. I stood there alone on the sidewalk, watching cars pass, feeling like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. After a few minutes, they came back out with her. She wasn't in cuffs. She wasn't crying. She looked annoyed more than anything. They told me I was in trouble, that I was free to go, that my name would be removed once they documented that I had no involvement. The word involvement echoed in my head like it didn't belong to me but had landed anyway. They walked her across the street and into the station. The door closed behind them. I didn't go back inside the cafe. I didn't finish my drink. I just walked. My hands shook as I pulled my phone out and unmatched her, blocked her. Erased the conversation like that could erase the night. For days after, I jumped every time I saw police lights. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened. I kept replaying the date, spotting every detail I missed. The way she chose the seat. The way she watched the station. The way she treated me less like a person and more like a timestamp. A week later, I got an email from Tinder saying my account had been referenced in a safety report. Nothing else. No details. Just a reminder to stay aware. I still walk past that cafe sometimes. The tables are usually full. People laughing. First dates. Job interviews. Normal stuff. I wonder how many of them are there for reasons they don't even know yet. I knew something was off before he even sat down, but I couldn't explain it in a way that sounded serious. It wasn't fear or dread. It was more the kind of discomfort you get when you put on a shirt that's slightly damp and you spend all day trying to ignore it. That's how the night felt from the start. Damp, wrong in a quiet way. We met at a casual pizza place that pretended to be trendy but was really just greasy and loud. Open kitchen, lawn tables, music that bounced off the walls. The kind of place people bring first dates because it feels public and safe and low pressure. I got there first and picked a seat near the middle, not close to the bathroom, not close to the door. I ordered a slice and a soda that cost $4 and sat scrolling while I waited. He showed up 5 minutes late, not enough to be rude, just enough to make an excuse. He looked normal at first glance. Clean hoodie, decent shoes, nervous smile, but when he sat down, he didn't settle. He shifted in his chair like it was uncomfortable, leaning forward, then back, then sideways. I asked if he was okay, and he nodded too fast. We started talking about basic stuff. Work, how long we'd been on Tinder, bad dates, the usual, but he kept wiping his hands on his jeans like they were sweaty, even though the place was cold. His face was pale in a way that didn't match the lighting. He kept clearing his throat even when he wasn't talking. About 10 minutes in, I noticed his leg bouncing under the table. Not a normal nervous bounce. It was frantic, like his body was trying to escape without him. He laughed at something I said, but it sounded strained, like it took effort. Then his stomach made a noise. Not a small one. Not the kind you can laugh off and blame on hunger. It was loud. Deep. The kind of sound that cuts through background music and clinking plates. A few people at nearby tables glanced over without meaning to. He froze. And I mean froze. His smile dropped. His eyes went wide. His whole body locked up like someone hit pause. For a second, I thought maybe he was embarrassed and deciding whether to joke about it or not. Then his face changed completely. It wasn't panic exactly. It was realization. Like something he had been holding back just slipped past the point of no return. His hands gripped the edge of the table. His breathing went shallow. I could see the moment it happened even before I understood what was happening. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. People turned. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He reached behind himself, then immediately grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and wrapped it around his waist. The smell hit next. It was unmistakable, heavy and sour and wrong. My stomach dropped. My brain refused to catch up. It took a second for the dots to connect, and when they did, I felt stuck in place, like my feet were glued to the floor. He didn't say anything. Not a word. He just clutched the jacket tighter, hunched over, and started moving toward the door. Not walking. Not running. This weird stiff half-run like he was trying not to move his legs too much. Everyone noticed now. Conversation stopped. Forks paused mid-air. Someone near the counter made a sound like they were about to laugh and then stopped themselves. The staff looked confused, then concerned, then very aware of the smell. He pushed through the door and disappeared outside. For a second, no one moved. It was like the whole place needed time to process what just happened. Then the noise slowly came back. Awkward laughter. Whispers. Someone saying something under their breath. I sat there, my face burning, staring at the empty chair across from me. That's when I saw his phone. It was still on the table right next to his plate. Screen lighting up over and over again. Tinder notifications popping up nonstop. New matches. Messages. Reminders. The screen buzzed so much it rattled against the table. I didn't touch it. I could. It felt wrong, like touching evidence at a crime scene. I just stared at it, watching his life continue digitally while he ran down the street wrapped in shame. The smell lingered. The staff came over and asked if everything was okay. I nodded even though nothing was okay. They offered to move me to another table. I said no, I just wanted to leave. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the door. As I passed the table, I glanced back once more at the phone. Another notification popped up. Another match. Another attempt at normalcy. Outside, the air felt too clean. I stood there for a moment trying to decide whether to laugh or cry or just stand still. I didn't see him anywhere. No sign of where he went. Just a street and passing cars and people who had no idea what just happened inside. I walked home instead of calling a ride. My head felt fuzzy, like I had been spun around too fast. Every few steps, my brain replayed the moment he froze. The sound, the look on his face, the way his body betrayed him in the worst possible public way. Later that night, I opened Tinder out of curiosity. His profile was still there, recently active, same photos, same bio, like nothing had happened, like he was somewhere dealing with the aftermath of the most humiliating moment imaginable. I wondered if he ever went back for his phone, if the staff threw it away, if someone else picked it up and scrolled through his life. I wondered if he ever told anyone about that night, or if he just erased it from his memory and kept swiping. I couldn't eat pizza for weeks after that. Every time I smelled it, my stomach turned. Not because of what happened exactly, but because of how fast a normal night can flip into something you can't unsee. I still think about that empty chair sometimes, the warmth it probably still held when I stood up, the phone buzzing on the table like nothing was wrong. I used to think the worst part of Tinder dates was the awkward silence, or the fake smiles, or the way you could tell within 5 minutes that it wasn't going anywhere. I didn't think about real danger or humiliation, or getting dragged into someone else's mess. I just thought it was an app for killing boredom. That night started like that. Boring. Normal. Forgettable. Until it was. We matched on a random afternoon when I was half paying attention, lying on my couch scrolling while something played in the background. Her profile felt light. Jokes that didn't try too hard. Photos that looked lived in, like she didn't care if her room was messy or if the lighting was bad. It felt real. That's always the trap part, I guess. We talked for a few days. Nothing intense. Mostly complaining about how weird dating apps felt now, how everyone seemed tired. When we finally met up, it was at a late-night diner on the edge of town. One of those places that never really closes but never feels fully open either. Cracked boots, sticky menus, the smell of fries soaked into everything. She showed up wearing an oversized jacket and sneakers, hair tied up like she didn't care how it looked. She smiled fast, sat down, and immediately made the space feel smaller in a good way. The conversation flowed. Not deep, not forced. Just easy. We talked about dumb stuff. Old jobs. Places we wanted to move but never would. It felt safe. After a while, she suggested going back to her place. She said it casually, like it was a big deal. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds and agreed. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel rushed. It felt like the next normal step in a normal night. Her place was a small apartment above a closed laundromat. The stairs smelled like dust and old soap. Inside, it was dim and warm, lit mostly by a lamp in the corner. There were shoes by the door that didn't look like hers. Bigger, worn differently. I noticed but didn't question it. People have roommates. It's normal. She took off her jacket and tossed it on a chair. Told me to make myself comfortable. She disappeared down the hallway for a second, saying she'd grab something. I stood there awkwardly looking at the walls. Framed photos. None of her alone. Always cropped in ways that cut someone else out. I noticed that too, but again, I didn't connect it. Then a guy walked out of one of the bedrooms. He didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first red flag. He looked calm, almost prepared, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He was around my age, maybe a little older, wearing sweatpants and a plain shirt, phone already in his hand. She followed him out and did the worst possible thing. She introduced us, called him her roommate, said it like it was nothing, like this was a normal thing she did all the time. My brain tried to accept that version for a second, tried to make it fit, but nothing about the room fit that story. The tension, the way he stood too close to her, the way she wouldn't look at either of us directly. He sat down on the couch and gestured for me to sit too. I did. I stayed standing, heart beating faster now, my instincts finally waking up late. Then he turned his phone toward me. I didn't need words to understand. Screenshots filled the screen. Messages between me and her. My name visible. Photos she had sent. Timestamps lining up perfectly. Proof stacked neatly, like he had organized it ahead of time. Like this was an emotional reaction, but a planned move. My stomach dropped. Not because I felt guilty. I didn't know she was seeing anyone, but because I realized I had been brought here on purpose. This was an accident. This was a surprise discovery. This was a setup. She stood there silently while he scrolled. Every swipe felt heavier than the last. Weeks of messages, jokes, plans, all laid out like evidence. I felt exposed in a way I never had before, like someone had taken my private thoughts and pinned them to a wall. He didn't yell. He didn't move fast. That scared me more. He stayed calm, almost detached, like this was something he'd already processed and now he was just finishing a task. She kept shifting her weight, arms crossed, eyes down. My mind raced through exits, the door behind me, the hallway, the stairs. I calculated how fast I could move if I needed to. I wondered if anyone else was in the apartment. I wondered if this had happened before. He finally stood up and walked closer, holding the phone out like he wanted me to really see it, like he wanted to make sure I understood exactly what role I played in their situation. Not as a person, but as a prop. She finally spoke then, trying to explain without really explaining, saying things were complicated, saying she didn't think it would get this far, saying she just wanted things to feel different for a while. None of it mattered. The damage was already done. He told her to go to the bedroom. She hesitated, then did. The door closed behind her, leaving just me and him in the living room. The silence felt thick. He sat back down and looked at me like he was studying something, like he was deciding what to do next. I didn't sit. I kept my hands visible, my body angled toward the door. After a long pause, he told me I could leave. Not kindly, not angrily, just flat, like he was dismissing me from a job I didn't apply for. I didn't argue. I did apologize. I just nodded and walked out, my legs shaking as soon as I hit the stairwell. I didn't run until I was outside. I walked for a long time that night. Didn't check my phone. Didn't look back. The air felt different, heavier, like I had stepped out of something I wasn't meant to be in. The next day, she unmatched me, blocked me, erased herself completely. I don't know what happened between them after I left. I don't want to know. Sometimes I think about how easily it could have gone worse, how controlled everything felt, how planned, how I was a person to them in that moment, just proof. I deleted Tinder for a while after that. Not forever, just long enough to forget how quickly a normal night can flip into something ugly without warning. I didn't think much about safety that night. Not in a smart way, more in a lazy way. It was one of those evenings where everything already felt off, so adding a Tinder date into it felt normal somehow. My room was messy, my phone was dying, and my brain was fried from scrolling too long. When he suggested a coffee place near the bus station instead of a bar, I didn't question it. I just wanted to get out of my little space and feel like a real person again. The place we picked wasn't cozy. It was bright in a way that made your eyes hurt and smelled like burnt espresso and disinfectant. The kind of place people sit in for 5 minutes and leave. Metal chairs, big windows, no corners to hide in. I got there early and took a seat near the wall, mostly because every other table felt too exposed. I ordered something small that cost $6 and told myself I wouldn't overthink it. I was already halfway through my drink when I noticed people looking toward the door. Not staring, just those quick glances people do when something doesn't fit right. Then he came in. He was late, but not in a casual sorry traffic way. He looked like he had been running. Sweat darkened his shirt under the arms and along the collar. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and his eyes were moving too fast, like he was scanning the room instead of seeing it. Before he even sat down, he turned his head and looked around the place in a full circle. The first thing he focused on wasn't me. It was the exits, front door, side door, hallway toward the bathrooms. He counted them without counting, if that makes sense. His body leaned slightly in their direction, like he was mapping something out in his head. When he finally sat down, he didn't apologize for being late. He didn't smile either. He just wiped his hands on his jeans and leaned back in the chair like he was trying to look relaxed, but didn't know how. His leg bounced so hard the table shook. Coffee sloshed dangerously close to the edge. I tried to start things normal. asking about his day, about the area, about how long he'd been on Tinder. He answered, but everything felt rushed, clipped, like he was trying to finish sentences before something interrupted him. Every few seconds, his eyes jumped to the door again. Then he asked where the exits were. Not in a smooth way. Not like someone with anxiety trying to plan ahead. It was immediate and sharp, like he needed confirmation. I pointed them out without thinking. Front, side, back hallway. The second I finished, I wished I hadn't. Something about the way his shoulders dropped after that made my stomach tighten. After that, the date never really started. He didn't ask me much. When he did, it was surface-level stuff like my name, where I worked, if I'd lived nearby. He didn't respond to my answers, just nodded like he was filing them away. Every time the door opened, he flinched. When someone laughed too loud, his jaw clenched. 10 minutes passed, maybe less. It felt longer because my brain was stuck in alert mode. I noticed small things I normally wouldn't. The way he kept his phone face down. The way he wiped sweat from his neck even though the room was cold. The way he sat angled toward the exit instead of toward me. Then everything broke at once. The front door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. Voices filled the room, loud and sharp and official. Police rushed in, more than seemed necessary for a coffee shop. People froze. Cups rattled. Someone dropped a tray behind the counter. It took me a second to realize they weren't there for a random check. They moved straight toward our table like they had practiced it. One went around behind him. Another blocked the side door. The room felt smaller instantly. He didn't stand up. He didn't run. He just sighed, like someone who knew the ending already. His hands went out slowly, not dramatic, just tired. His face lost that tight edge and went flat. Calm, almost relieved. They arrested him right there, cuffed him while everyone stared. Someone whispered. Someone else pulled out their phone. I stayed still, my hands wrapped around my cup even though it was empty. As they walked him out, one of the officers glanced at me and asked if I knew him. I shook my head. My mouth felt dry. The officer nodded and followed the others. The barista came over and asked if I was okay. I said yes because that's what people say when they don't know what else to say. She offered me water. I accepted it and took a sip I didn't need. After a few minutes, the place slowly went back to normal. People talked again. Music came back on. The line moved. It was like the whole thing had been a pause button no one wanted to acknowledge. One of the cops came back in alone and asked me to step outside. He told me the guy had skipped court earlier that day. Serious charges. Warrants tacked. He'd been moving around all week, meeting people from dating apps, sitting in public places so he wouldn't stand out, blending in by pretending to be normal for an hour at a time. He said Tinder dates made him look harmless, said sitting across from a girl with a coffee made him invisible. That part stuck with me. The officer asked if he'd said anything threatening, if he'd mentioned court or police, if he'd seemed unstable. I answered honestly. I told him about the exits, about the sweating, about the constant scanning. The officer nodded like it matched what he already knew. He told me I could go. I walked home even though it was farther than I had planned. My phone buzzed with a Tinder notification halfway there. A message from him sent before the arrest, asking if I want to hang out again somewhere quieter. I unmatched without thinking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared in a dramatic way. More that my brain kept replaying small details. The way he relaxed when the cuffs went on. The way he never once looked surprised. The way he had already accepted how it would end. The next morning, I checked the local news out of curiosity. There was a short article about the arrest. No names. Just a description. Skipping court. Caught in a public place. No mention of Tinder. No mention of dates. Just another guy finally caught. But I knew there were probably others. Other tables. Other coffees. Other people sitting across from him, thinking they were just killing time on a boring night. Now, whenever someone shows up late and immediately checks the room, I notice. I might ignore it. I not make excuses for it. I trust that tight feeling in my chest that says something isn't right. The coffee place closed a month later, replaced by a phone repair shop. I walk past it sometimes and try to remember exactly where we sat. I can't. It all blends together now. I didn't even want to go out that night. I was already half dressed, scrolling through my phone on my bed, telling myself I'd cancel and blame work or my car or something dumb. But her profile kept popping back into my head, not because she was insanely pretty, but because she felt normal. Bad selfies, weird jokes, typing like a real person and not a brand. It felt safe, which is funny now that I think about it. The bar was one of those places that tried to look chill but smelled like cleaning spray and old beer. Fake plants. Loud music that never matched the vibe. I got there early and sat at a corner table where I could see the door. I always do that. I ordered something cheap, like $8 cheap, and told myself I wasn't nervous. I was lying. She showed up 10 minutes late, flustered, hoodie half zipped, hair still damp like she rushed. She smiled like she already knew me, like we had met before and forgot. That threw me off in a good way. She sat down, tossed her bag under the table, and we started talking. Nothing deep. Work stuff. How bad traffic was. How Tinder felt cursed lately. Normal things. It felt like a regular night that would end with a handshake, or maybe a hug, and then I'd never think about it again. The first weird thing wasn't obvious. It was small. Her phone kept lighting up. Not buzzing, just lighting up on the table like it was trying to get attention without noise. She kept flipping it face down, over and over. Every time it lit up, she flinched a little, like her body reacted before her brain caught up. I didn't say anything. I figured it was an ex or a friend or one of those family group chats that never shut up. I kept talking, telling some dumb story about getting lost on the way there, even though I used GPS for everything. She laughed, but it felt delayed, like her mind was somewhere else. About halfway through the drinks, her phone finally rang. Full sound. Loud enough that people at the bar turned. She froze. Didn't reach for it right away. Just stared at it like it was a bug crawling across the table. Then she picked it up and answered. She didn't get up or step away. She stayed sitting there, shoulders tight, eyes locked on the table. She said she was on the date now. Not joking. Not casual. Like she was reporting her location to someone who already knew too much. Then she looked straight at me and leaned in. Her voice dropped low. She told me her husband was tracking her phone and that I needed to act natural. My brain didn't process that in the right order. I got stuck on the word husband. I barely noticed the tracking part until later. I just nodded because that's what you do when your brain stalls out. Nod and smile and pretend you know what's going on. She hung up and slid her phone into her bag like she was hiding it from the table itself. She took a long sip of her drink and didn't look at me. Her hand was shaking. Not dramatic, just enough that the ice clicked against the glass. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to stand up and walk out, but my legs felt glued to the chair. Another part of me was weirdly calm, like this was a prank or a test for some social experiment I didn't sign up for. I asked her what she meant, but she brushed it off fast. Said it was complicated. Said she didn't want to talk about it there. The rest of the bar suddenly felt louder. Every laugh sounded fake. Every person felt too close. I became aware of the windows, the door, the fact that I was sitting with my back to the wall. She kept glancing around, especially toward the entrance. Every time the door opened, her shoulders jumped. She told me he had a temper. Not in a dramatic way. More like she was stating the weather. She said he checked her location all the time. She said she told him she was out with friends. Then she said she wasn't supposed to be on Tinder at all. She laughed when she said that, but it didn't reach her eyes. I asked why she came then. She shrugged and said she needed to feel normal for a night. That she needed to remember what it felt like to sit across from someone who didn't already know all her habits. That sentence stuck with me. Another drink showed up that neither of us ordered. The bartender said it was from the guy at the end of the bar. She didn't even look. She pushed it away like it offended her. That's when I noticed the bruise on her wrist. Yellowed at the edges. Old enough to be healing, but not old enough to forget. She caught me looking and pulled her sleeve down. She said she was clumsy. I didn't argue. About 20 minutes later, her phone lit up again. No sound this time. Just the screen. She checked it and her face drained of color. She said he was nearby. Said the app showed he was moving. Closer. She said he probably checked the address and figured it out. I asked if we should leave. She said no. Said leaving would look suspicious. Said we had to finish the drinks and act like nothing was wrong. Like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I started talking. I don't even remember what about. I just filled the air with noise, school memories, random internet stuff. Anything to keep the moment from cracking. She nodded along, barely listening. Her eyes kept flicking to the door. Then the door opened and a guy walked in. Tall. Heavy steps. Jacket even though it wasn't cold. He scanned the room like he was looking for lost keys. When his eyes landed on us, he smiled. Not friendly, not angry, just knowing. She went stiff. Her hand grabbed my wrist under the table, nails digging in hard enough to hurt. She didn't look at him. She stared at her drink like it could save her. He walked over slow, didn't rush, like he had all the time in the world. He put a hand on the back of her chair, leaned in close to her ear. I couldn't hear what he said, but her face changed. She nodded, stood up, grabbed her bag. He looked at me then, finally. His eyes were flat. He thanked me for keeping her company. His voice was calm, polite, like we had just met at a grocery store. Then he wrapped an arm around her shoulders and guided her toward the door. She looked back once, just once. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. Then they were gone. I sat there for a long time after. Long enough that the bartender asked if I was okay. I paid for the drinks, including hers. It came out to $27. I walked home instead of calling a ride. I needed the air. A week later, I opened Tinder out of habit. Her profile was gone, unmatched, erased, like it never existed. Sometimes I still think about that night. Not in a dramatic way. Just randomly. When my phone lights up. When I see couples arguing quietly in public. When someone says they need to feel normal for a night.